sun. We're a summer-loving crowd, talking Brazil ball.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Talking Brazil Ball. We're here to go over the latest goings on in the world of Brazilian football. I'm joined, as always, by my host, George. How are we doing, George? We had a few technical difficulties earlier. This is take 2, isn't it? How are we looking now?
It is. I think we're looking okay. It's a little bit laggy still, but hopefully it sorts itself out as the stream goes on. You've now paused, James, with your eyes closed, so But come on by, James.
Yeah, that's probably better, isn't it? I'm all right. Yeah, doing okay. No issues on this end. All seems relatively fine. So, all good. All good. Just one game.
I'd like to say, James, benvido e terça-feira to the viewers and to everybody. It's welcome. It's Tuesday. So Tuesday, James, we know what happens on a Tuesday, don't we?
Yeah, it should be renamed, shouldn't it? Talking Brazil Ball Day.
That's it, isn't it? Yeah, maybe it will be in Brazil. Who knows?
Yeah, maybe it will be. It should be really, but we'll wait on that one anyway. But yeah, like I said, one game week to look back on this week. Been a pretty big one, as we mentioned last time, George. There was an absolutely massive game at the top of the table, so that's something to look forward to during today's show. Some other big games and other big performances to talk about, really, isn't there?
Oh, absolutely, James. There is. It's a massive week. It was a huge week in the Brasileirão, with at the top and bottom of the table, some really, really massive wins at the top and bottom. So yeah, it's fantastic, and I'm looking forward to getting into it. There's plenty to talk about.
Yeah, there always is, but yeah, there does seem to be a lot going on this week, especially. So, before we kick off and get stuck into exactly what went on, why don't you do your usual thing and run down, get the listeners up to date with the results that happened since we last met?
Well, yeah, it would be my pleasure, James. It really would. So, yeah, será prazer. So basically, Saturday, the 31st of August, Cuiabá 2, Criciúma 1. Sunday, the 1st of September, Botafogo 2, Fortaleza 0. Cruzeiro 3, Atletico Go 1. Grêmio 2, Galo 3. Corinthians 2, Flamengo 1. Atletico Paranaense 0, Palmeiras 2. Fluminense 2, Sao Paulo 0. Juventus.
We seem to have lost George there. Again, some technical difficulties going on, I think, down on George's end. We'll see if we can get him back. I think he was just on the Juventude one, so I'll take over just while we see if George can come back. So Juventude 1, Internacional 3. Red Bull Bragantino got a much-needed win, and they beat Bahia 2-1. On Sunday, and then the final game of the match week was the Battle of the V's. It was Vitória against Vasco da Gama, and Vitória ended up on the losing side that one, so it was 1-0 to Vasco da Gama in that one. Okay, so we seem to be back, George, I think, hopefully for the time being. Anyway, lost you there for a second. I'm not sure how that'll sound once we piece it together, but
I just don't know what happened, James. The computer seems to be, there seems to be a monster in the computer.
Yeah, we've had a few things somebody doesn't want us to get Talking Brazil Ball out today, it seems like. But anyway,
it does seem a bit like that.
It does, but we'll keep going anyway until they can't silence us that easily, I don't think. Let's get on to the games of the week first of all then. And I think what we'll do, I know you usually start with the game of the week, George, but I think we'll go with my one just to start with, just because, we can transition into your one away from your one, I think, quite easily with some of the awards. So if that's all right with you, we'll start with Fluminense Sao Paulo.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, crack on, James. Yeah, go for it. Ladies first, as they say.
Oh, you haven't got that one down in Portuguese. You'll have to get that one, won't you, while you're trying to impress the ladies?
Yeah, I mean, I could do, couldn't I? Senhoras Primero.
Whoa, there you go. What a gentleman. So, yeah, Fluminense, Sao Paulo finished 2-0 to Flu. So, a really big result for them. Your mate, George Mano, is really got them going now. He's got a nice little run put together. This was their third win in a row, Flu. So some big wins picked up in that period as well. But this one wasn't a given going into it. Sao Paulo obviously, having a pretty good season under Zubeldia, as we kind of outlined last time. They're still in all the competitions. They're kind of in with the shout of a treble. Well, not a treble. I mean, they're not going to win the league, are they? But they're up there in both competitions, the cup competitions, and they are kind of going relatively well. In the Brasileirão as well. So this was a big test for Flu, but they were coming into it on the back of two really big results against Grêmio and against Galo. So two big results aiming for a third, and in the end they were pretty decent value for it from what I could tell. I think we're going to go into one of the goals in particular a little bit more detail. So I don't want to give too much away on that one, but it was an opener from Kawa Elias, George, who we haven't really mentioned for quite some time, really. He was flavour of the month at one stage, wasn't he, as a young player, young striker. Couldn't seem to keep out the goals for Flu. He's gone a little bit off the boil, but he was certainly back to boiling point on this one. I mean, what a goal to put them into the lead. And as I say, we are going to touch on that a little bit more later. And then it was kind of a kind of a end-to-end game, I think, from what I can tell from there on in. And then there was a late goal from Keno. Or Keno, right on injury time, which just killed it off for Flu. But this was an interesting one, George, because Keno has actually been on the receiving end of quite a bit of criticism from Flu fans. Obviously, they haven't had a great season so far, as we know, and Keno seems to have taken a bit of the brunt of that. And I think the frustration got to him a little bit because they played Juventude in the Cup a couple of weeks ago, and I think they lost that game 3-1 maybe in the end. But Keno got a goal in that, and just to answer back his critics, he did a bit of a kind of a shush in to the crowd after his goal, and this was not well received at all by the Flu kind of faithful. They were upset with the way he'd been playing, and they were frustrated that even in a game that they were going on to lose against a team they probably should have been beating, that Keno was still determined to kind of make a kind of a show at them, really. So, but this goal, he put that all behind him. He scored. It was a well-taken finish right at the end of the game, and he did a kind of a hands-together forgiveness sign in front of the Flu fans, and it seems to have had the desired effect. Everybody seems to be ready to kind of start afresh, start anew. And yeah, it finished the game off for them in this one. So I don't know how you saw the result itself in terms of a win for Flu, George.
Oh, James, it was a massive result for Fluminense. I mean, they'll be frustrated, won't they, that Corinthians got the win as well. Massive win for them as well. But yeah, look, they're out the relegation zone, aren't they now? So they're only just a couple of points ahead. But they're starting to, it wasn't a surprise, and that's a bit of a compliment, really. What I can say for them for how they've performed so far this season. They've been really poor, but it wasn't a surprise to see them beat Sao Paulo the other night. So yeah, brilliant result. Like you said, they're on a little run now. The second 2-0 win in as many games. So who knows where they can go from here? You know what I mean? Who knows? I think it's a more a case of looking up now than for Fluminense than looking down. I would have said towards the bottom four. I think it's it's a really, really important result for them.
Yeah, for sure. Like you said, they are putting together a little bit of a run now, and it probably was a bit of a frustration to them that Corinthians also picked up a win, because it just means that buffer between them and the relegation zone isn't as big as it probably should have been, really. I mean, it just goes to show how bad they have been throughout the season, that they've won 3 in a row, and they are only just sitting what is it, 1 point ahead of the relegation zone. So, that just gives you
2 points.
2 points. So that just gives you an idea, having picked up 9 from 9, just how poor they have been. But like I said, the players like Keno, I know there's been others who have obviously haven't really had a redemption, John Kennedy and the like, who are are making peace with the fans, and hopefully they can kick on from here. I mean, it is important, I think, just to mention that they have lost as well a couple of key players. I mean, Andre, I've been banging the drum about him, George. Listeners will know if they've been with us through the start that he's one of my favourites from the Brasileirão, and he's now finally got his move. He's gone to Wolves, which seen as he could have joined Liverpool a year ago, bit of a step down, but he's going to be there in the midfield duo along with João Gomes. So that's something to kind of keep an eye on how he does. But it is obviously maybe expected for Flu, but it's still a massive loss for them nevertheless. Alexander as well, another midfielder, young player who is really quite highly rated. I think he's gone to Saudi Arabia, George, and it seems to be a bit of a theme this week that there's been a few kind of Brazilian players going to the Saudi clubs. I noticed that Marcus Leonardo has gone as well, which is a real shame, from Benfica to Al Hilal. But either that's beside the point with regards to this game. But yeah, big win for Flu, just on Sao Paulo, second loss in a row for them. They do seem to just stumble a little just as they're picking up a little bit of a kind of a run. Zubeldia, as he does seem to be, George, was upset with the referees again. I mean, there was a big flashpoint, to be fair, in that first goal, which, like I said, we will go into a bit more depth on later. The Kawa Elias goal, it was a quickly taken free kick. And within about 2 passes, I think the ball was in the back of the net. But Sao Paulo were upset that the ball was moving while the free kick was taken. And Zubeldia in particular was very upset with that. I think it ended in Rafinha picking up a booking, which he was very upset about as well. And he said that there's an authoritarianism within the referees in the league. And he was frustrated that basically the refs, in his view, had cost them, a chance at a really big 3 points away at Flu. But, from what I can tell, they didn't really deserve the win anyway. I think that was a bit of a footnote in the end, but he was frustrated either way. But again, something I'd like to mention on Sao Paulo, George, in the transfer market. I just messaged you just before we did the show that Jamal Lewis has made the move to Sao Paulo, which is a really, really strange transfer. From Newcastle, left back, hadn't really been playing really ever since he moved to Newcastle, and just out of nowhere really has joined Sao Paulo on a loan move. So your reaction to that one, George? He's obviously done well in the Championship before with Norwich, I think it was, wasn't he? And he's somewhat established as an international, I think, Northern Ireland, but he's not exactly the kind of player you often see moving to Sao Paulo, is he? Or to Brazil at all?
This is quite incredible, to me, James. I'm quite taken aback by it, really, to be honest. I mean, he spent last season on loan at Watford. You're right. He was at Norwich and he came to Newcastle. Not really played a great deal for Newcastle. Obviously not in the pitch, but you would have never guessed him to go to Brazil, would you? So no. Yeah, crazy transfer. Obviously, as a British player, I want to know, James, if anybody watching can let any of us know. Who was the last British player to play in Brazil? You probably won't have had many at all. It's quite incredible, this, to be honest. And yeah, I can't quite believe it, if I'm being completely honest.
No, there wouldn't have been a lot. I mean, at least not for a long, long time. It's a really big move, and we'll see how he gets on. I mean, obviously it might fit him a little bit more. He's done well in the Championship. I know that Liverpool were really heavily linked with him a few years back before he joined Newcastle, and we don't get many wrong in the transfer market. So he's got something, hasn't he? And yeah, it'll be great to see how he gets on out there, and hopefully he can make a good fist of it and kind of turn up for the British kind of cohort, because like you said, it's not a lot of representation that we kind of get over there. So one to follow for sure, George, and see. I think it is on loan with an option to buy, so we'll see how that kind of transpires. But yeah, funny times at Sao Paulo, really. But yeah, let's move on, George, because you did cover the biggest game of the weekend. And And, it wasn't an 0-0 for you this time, was it? It was a little bit more exciting. So you were covering the top of the table clash, weren't you? Botafogo, Fortaleza on an absolute rampant run of form, top of the table going into the game, I believe. And so what happened, George? What happened over in Rio?
Yeah, I mean, it was, again, like you said, James, Fortaleza on an incredible run of form. I think it was something like 13 games unbeaten. But yeah, 13 games unbeaten since they last lost to Vasco at the very, very early part of July. So you're talking 2 months now they're unbeaten for. And it was a massive result for Botafogo, who leapfrogged them into first place now. They're first on 50 points. Fortaleza sits second with 48. But it was a non-starter in terms of who deserved to win. It was Botafogo's game right from the beginning, James. Fortaleza just couldn't get into it, couldn't get into the game, and were battered basically from minute one. Really, I think it was a shame. I think as a neutral fan, you might have wanted Fortaleza to get a win here, but Botafogo are far superior. And that's that's not being rude to Fortaleza. It's just the way it is. You'd expect Botafogo to win these sort of games. If you said, James, start the season, Botafogo against Fortaleza, you'd have put your money on Botafogo every single time, and you wouldn't have bet it was a top of the table game either, really. And yeah, they really have. I mean, Fortaleza one shot on target the whole game. 64% possession for Fogo, so they were well on top. And you've got to say, like I said, they're far and away superior. And look at the team they've got, James. It's for this level, it's far too good. And I was reading they've spent 200 million Brazilian dollars on this transfer window. So
yeah, they do. They do seem to have kind of put their hand in the pocket a bit recently, John Textor. And like you said, the squad is starting to look very, very strong, and they do have this tendency of passing players through on the way to Europe. Obviously, Almada has joined, hasn't he? And obviously Henrique is still there. So that I mean, I don't know the rules and regulations around that, but it does feel a little bit like it's kind of on the edge of being legal, doesn't it? Really, it certainly seems to give them a bit of an advantage.
Yeah, it is. You have to question a little bit what's Textor up to. You know what I mean? But obviously, Almeida mentioned he copped for half of that fee. I think he was over 100 Brazilian dollars. They went big on sort of ex Premier League based players. Alex Tellers has joined them, I think, today or yesterday. They've got Vitino, sorry, from Burnley. I mean, what a change that is. I know he's a Brazilian man, but coming all the way from Burnley to Botafogo, a bit of a change for him there, James. To Burnley to Rio, But yeah, look, they've spent big, and they've got a team that is far and away definitely more superior than Fortaleza, who obviously they can't let this dampen the spirits. They're still well in with a chance here. They've got a game in hand on Fogo as well. So if they win that, they'll leapfrog them by 1 point. So they're not out of it at all. They're well in the top four. The 7 points ahead of Cruzeiro in fifth. So they can't be too disheartened. I know Voivoda, he's never beaten Botafogo at all in I think 6 attempts. So he's yet to beat them as a manager. So it's a bit of a bogey team for him. But I don't think he was too disheartened by the loss, and they just got to keep going. The absolutely fabulous run had to come to an end at some stage, and obviously it's come at the hands of Botafogo. But yeah, they've got to keep going. Massive game next one, obviously, now on Wednesday, in the following Wednesday, sorry, a week on Wednesday. So they need to just get back on it, get back on the horse, and try and go for a win there. But Fogo, I think they're going to win it, James.
Yeah, they're certainly looking good. I mean, for Laser, you're absolutely right. I don't think they should be too down about a result like this. I mean, if you look at it kind of cynically, you'd say, well, it was the absolute one game that they really could have done without the result. And if they'd have lost the one before it and then won this one, they'd have taken that, wouldn't they? But that's not the way football works. So they're right in there, like you say. You just hope that it hasn't taken the wind too much out of the sails, because like we said before, the expectations get recalibrated quite quickly over a season, and while they would have never expected to be up there at this stage, when you're up there, you want to go for it, and this would have been disappointing for them, because they probably would have gone in quietly confident that, okay, we can possibly do something. And if they had won that, George, I mean, they'd have been they'd have been a miles ahead, wouldn't they? Really, they'd have been 4 points ahead with the game in hand. So I mean, that's kind of game changing, really. So yeah, you just hope it hasn't knocked them too far back.
Yeah, I hope not, James, because they've done really, really well, and like you said, all right, it does get recalibrated. You're right, and because they're doing so well, and it's not early season, we're banging on to the end of the season now, 14 for them to go, and also that they're still I think they're still in the Sudamericana. They got to the final last year, James, and I don't think many would have predicted at all a route to the Libertadores for Fortaleza in the league. So, he's doing a great job. I mean, it wouldn't be surprised to me if he ends up getting a bigger job potentially next season. But want to talk about Arthur Jorge for a bit, James, because for me, he's the best in the league, I think. I think he's the best in the league, and that's it. I just wanted to say that, really.
Oh, so you wanted to talk about him for a bit? Okay. Well, let's move on. I mean, you can't argue with that, really, can you? The way he is top of the table, he's coming at an impact. But yeah, that was quite the soliloquy. Let's get on to the awards, because some listeners might notice that you haven't, mentioned the goals at all there. You haven't mentioned what happened, within the game, and there is a reason for that, and that's because both the goals this week, George, were scored by our player of the round. So let's do a nice segue into that now, because they were two really good goals, weren't they? I mean, the first one in particular was beautiful. But just before we do mention, we go on to talk about Igor Jesus, who did win the player of the round, obviously. There was another candidate I just wanted to bring up quickly, which was Caio Jorge, of course, for Cruzeiro. We haven't mentioned Cruzeiro too much recently, but he got a goal and an assist in their game. They beat Atletico Gio 3-1, and he's only 22, so he's still quite a young player. Only his 11th appearance for Cruzeiro. I think he joined them very recently. Nice little cross ball for the first goal, and then he got a nice little dink finish after some really good work from Mateus Pereira, who, as we know, is so key for Cruzeiro. So I just wanted to give a shout out to Caio Jorge.
Yeah, I mean, this guy must be some player, to be fair, James, on the books at Juventus, a couple of years ago. And he played, a handful of games, but that's no disgrace because they've got a fabulous team. Played for a couple of years, 11 appearances in the first team. He was on loan at Frosinone in Italy. Yeah, Frosinone. Was that last season? Yeah, last season. So, yeah, maybe one to watch. Like I said, just misses out on our young player category, doesn't he? There, but a good game for him.
Yeah, he's already obviously broken through at Santos, as we know. It's a huge club to break through at. Big tradition of young players. So obviously, the move to Juventus is a big one. Obviously lost his way a little bit. Frosinone as well, a smaller team in Italy. And yet he's quite a little pickup, I think, for Cruzeiro. And obviously he's not been there long and already showing what he can do. So, yeah, I just wanted to mention him because I don't think it'll be the last time that we do give him a bit of a shout out there, George. But obviously, he couldn't touch the player of the round. There was only one winner this time. Like I said, Mr. Igor Jesus, who was a match winner for Botafogo, and ultimately he gave them the biggest 3 points of the season. So, George, what can you tell us about how? I mean, obviously you were covering this game, so what can you tell us about Jesus?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, like you said, I don't think anybody really touched him when you talk about Jorge, but I don't think he was really anywhere near. I think this one was pretty sewn up as soon as he scored them 2 goals. And yeah, I mean, it was quite late in the game. Like you said, the first one in particular was a really, really nice goal here. Really like a lofted ball up from the back, and he controlled it, and then he put it in right, arrowed across the goalkeeper. It was a great finish. But as for the man himself, to be fair, not a great deal really, James. Actually, I couldn't really find that much information on him. Obviously, 23-year-old. He came to Botafogo from Shabab Al Alahai club in Dubai. So he was playing in the Dubai Pro League. He actually got quite a lot of goals in there, 14 in all. And then he's only just signed for Botafogo last month, and he's already got 4 goals, James. So he looks like a player, this lad. I don't know, no disrespect to the Dubai League, but I don't know how he ended up there, really, after coming through from Curitiba in 2019. So, yeah, he played as a young lad for Curitiba, and a fair few appearances for them. He got a lot of goals in Dubai, to be fair, and now he's made his way a free transfer to Botafogo last month. So he started well. Can he continue it?
Yeah, I think the answer to how he ended up there is probably the same as how any footballer really ends up in that part of the world at the minute. It's probably an offer he got, which was a bit too good to turn down, and he moved along, and it's a shame, really. Like I said, we're seeing it a lot these last few days with the Saudi league. A lot of young Brazilians are going over there, and you can't blame them. You know, a lot of them are from abject kind of poverty, really, and you can't blame them for jumping at the chance. But it does mean that some talents get a little bit wasted, where we might want to see them play at a higher level. But Igor Jesus, like you said, he's still only 23. It's not too late for him to have a proper crack, and if he continues his form at Fogo, then he may well be on the radar of some kind of European sides and maybe bigger sides in, well, not bigger. He can't really get too much bigger in Brazil, but he certainly might be on the radar for Dorival Jr. for the national team, because, as you said, he's got 4 goals in 9 in the Serie A now, but he's actually done better than that in all competitions. He's got 6 in 13, and he's got 5 in his last 5. So he's the man in form in the Brasileirão. And you mentioned that money that Fogo have spent. And it could end up being that it might be the man on the free transfer who makes the biggest difference of all.
Yeah, absolutely, James. We've seen it so many times. You spend big money on a player and he doesn't quite live up to it. It's the men already there, or like you said, the lads that come in on a free transfer that really, put the shift in and score the goals for the team. So he's in form, like you said. I don't think it'd be a surprise to see Dorival Jr. dip into the homegrown players and perhaps pick him for a call up, because you can't say fairer than he's scoring goals. So he does seem to give the homegrown players a bit more of an opportunity than perhaps we've seen in the past. So keep scoring goals, and who knows where he can end up. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and like you said, I mean, it was worth mentioning again that the first goal in particular, I mean, both goals he got in this game were in the final 20 minutes. So it was late goals, big goals, obviously, and that first one is so well taken. It's a big ball from the defence. I think Alexander Barbosa just takes it on his chest and then, just like you said, batters it across the keeper. It's a really lovely finish. Second one, he's put through by a really nice through ball. and he finishes it off beautifully as well. So yeah, one to watch for sure. And like you said, George, nobody really came close to him this week. Such a big game at the top of the table, and he's been absolutely decisive in that. So well done to Igor Jesus, who is the player of the round, and we're certainly going to be keeping an eye on what he's got in store for us next, George. But
well, you
the
can see
worst.
him behind me, James. Sorry, you can see him behind me. We're getting a hug from his manager there, obviously. Number 99 he seems to wear. So, yeah, we've seen that a fair few times, haven't we? So he likes that number clearly.
Yeah, so I think it's often players who wanted the number 9, isn't it? And then they just decide, well, I'll go double 9 then.
You're right, yeah, it is. I mean, and also, James, I think Fortaleza were praying for Jesus to save them after this one. To be fair, to get them away from this game, but they're,
No,
they're on.
he
He
certainly
put
saved.
them to this.
Yeah, well, yeah, he certainly saved Botafogo, didn't he? Anyway, let's move on. Well done to Fogo. Well done to Igor Jesus. Massive win for them. Onto the young players, George, because there is plenty to talk about in this category this time. We've seen it a few times where the young players have really stepped up, and we can see that again. Obviously, our favourite man, the man who's really the one to talk about in Serie A this year, Esteval Willian. I mean, George, another goal for him, another really well taken goal for him, and this was pushing goal of the round, to be fair, wasn't it?
Yeah, it definitely was. I really liked this goal. Actually, I did. Nice little shimmy to get away from the defender, and he just blasted it in the goal. No one didn't stand on ceremony, but it was. I was perhaps swaying towards this one, maybe, but yeah, he just keeps going, doesn't he, James? You know what I mean? Pretty standard win for Palmeiras, really, as you'd expect them to do. Just a standard 2-0 win, and he gets on the score sheet, as you know he will. 8 goals now. I think he's on the way to bettering Neymar's tally, like you said last week, from that season as a young player.
Yeah,
he's got 15, hasn't he? Now, did you say Neymar had 16?
Yeah, Neymar's got
Goal
16, so
involvements.
he's just one behind now. Yeah, just one behind.
Yeah, so he's going to get that, isn't he? So very, very impressive. But he didn't get on there for that award this time, did he, James? Like I said, there was plenty of candidates this week.
Yeah, there was. Yeah, Douglas Mendes was another one who we spoke about last week, George, for Red Bull Bragantino. He's coming to the fore a little bit, as we suspected that he perhaps might. He got another goal. This was a nice taken header. I mean, he seems to have a knack for finding the space. I mean, last week he got a finish where the defence just basically left him alone, and same thing kind of happened in this one. Really, the Bahia defenders just kind of lost him, and he just. This was a header, very nicely taken header. So he was another who got a goal. As we mentioned before, Kawa Elias with a beautiful goal again, which I am going to touch on a bit more detail later on. But that was a great goal too, George. Obviously, we've spoken about Flu's win already. Another man who I wanted to mention, George, Gabriel Carvalho. We've got a young player each for our teams who have lit up the Brazil around this week. Gabriel Carvalho, I mean. This boy is really worth keeping an eye on, I think. I mean, similarly like Estevao, I mean, Douglas Mendes is, 20 already? Some of obviously our category, George, is 21 and under, but Gabriel Carvalho has only just turned 17, and we've already mentioned him on this show in the past. He got his first ever goal in this game, so it was a big goal for Inter as well. Put them 2-0 up against Juventude, which they did eventually win 3-1. But yeah, nice finish for him, and he's one who's really on my radar for now.
Definitely, James. Yeah, I mean, it was a tapping goal, wasn't it? But they all count, and it means the world to him. And Inter themselves are really, really getting going now. Only one defeat in the last 5, won 3 of those games. Yeah, so they're really getting. Ironically, 2 of them against Cruzeiro, 2 of them against Juventude. The odd one out they lost against Gio. So. Yeah, they're getting going into, Carvalho, definitely one to look at and keep an eye on. Such a young lad as well, fair play to him.
Yeah, for sure. 2 assists and a goal so far for Inter. So he's really made a difference for Mercado. And like you said, George, nice to see them doing well. I mean, I know I keep saying that I think they're going to be fine. They're in a bit of a false position. They're now 10th and looking pretty good. So I think we'll start to see him shoot up the table, and Carvalho will be right at the heart of that, I reckon. So he did well. He was in the running. Another one, like I mentioned, George, we both had a young player in this round. I don't know if you want to mention Brahim Palacio, who has not come onto my radar before. I don't know about you.
Yeah. I mean, Palacio, he was a summer signing actually, James, Colombian lad, signed for this season from Atletico Nacional, which is a Colombian side, who are top of the league in Colombia at the moment, albeit early season. But yeah, he signed for the season, but Brahan Palacios. And yeah, look, I mean, he got a really pressured penalty. I mean, Garlo, I mean, talking about Bournemouth at the weekend, James, in the Premier League, this was Bournemouth-esque, wasn't it? 2-1 down in the last few, in stoppage time, and they went on to win 3-2. Palacios himself, like I said, it was a pressure penalty at 2-1 down in the 4th minute of added-on time. Really coolly taken to put them 2-2. And then Vargas, he went on to seal the win in the 6th minute of stoppage time. Massive win for Garlo because they've been on horrible form, horrendous form, really. And we talk about Inter. Inter are only a point behind them, James, a point and a place behind them. So that just tells you how bad a form, really, Atletico Mineiro have been on. So yeah, I mean, they have won in the first leg of the cup. They beat Sao Paulo on Thursday night. So we see about the second leg next Friday, but they needed it. You know, Milito needed it because he's running out of time.
Yeah, you're keen to get him gone, aren't you? But he is hanging in
I
there.
don't
And like you
like him.
said,
Yeah, I don't really like him, James. It's just one of them. Yeah.
yeah, bit harsh that I think. But he's obviously got the win here in Gremio. Disappointment for them. They've been pulling away a little bit from the relegation zone, haven't they? But still right bang in there. You know, they're not. Nobody's quite safe within that group of 6, 7 teams yet. So very disappointing for them to throw away a game like that. But George, we've mentioned quite a few youngsters there who were all in the running, but none of them won the Young Player of the Round award because that went to Gustavinho, who's a Red Bull Bragantino midfielder, and this one was, I mean, much deserved. I think any of those mentioned, you know, some of them got, obviously Palacios got a very big pressure penalty. Esteval's goal was relatively big in some ways. Elias as well, but Gustavinho's was the biggest of all, really. I mean, Red Bull Bragantino really badly needed this goal. So it was 1-1 against Bahia heading into injury time, which not necessarily a terrible result, all things considered for them, but they've not won in 7 games in the Brazilian Serie A before this. They'd lost 3 in a row, George. They were sliding towards relegation places, as we mentioned last week. And up pops Gustavinho with a beautiful touch to turn, like a one-touch, and turned and smashed on the half volley into the bottom corner to win the game in the 96th minute for Red Bull Bragantino. Bahia players dropping to their knees around him. What a goal, what a moment, and a big and richly deserved player, a young player of the award for Gustavinho.
Yeah, you know, I mean, it's not the first time we've spoken about Gustavinho, James, on the pod, but yeah, well deserved. Such a big goal, like you said. They've won in the cups, but they haven't won in the Brasileirão since mid-July. So it was a really, yeah, like you said, it was a really badly needed win for them, and such a time. Lovely finish late in the game. What more could you want from their point of view? Because I think that the manager surely coming under a bit of pressure now. I know he's been there for a little while, hasn't he? A couple of years, Pedro Caixinha, but nobody's safe in Brazil, are they, from the chop, really? So, you know, big goal, and you know, and he deserves it this time. And I don't think we really speak too much about Bragantino, James, but I think it is probably because they're not doing so well. I mean, into 11th with that win, but like you said, they were only a couple of points ahead of the relegation zone if they lost this game. So yeah, massive win, massive goal from Gustavino, and much deserved this week.
Yeah, for sure. He's like you said, he's crossed our kind of path before, but not in great detail. He's kind of in and out of the team for Bragantino. This was just his 10th start, I think, of the season. He did come off the bench here as well. It was his first goal of the season. I saw after the game that he revealed that he had quite a bit of criticism. I think it was from the fans or social media or whatever. He seems to have been a little bit of a scapegoat for Bragantino's poor form. So he said he took it as motivation, and he obviously put that to good use and has come out the other side of that. And hopefully, like you said, they can start to put a bit of a run together because, yeah, they had just been slipping a bit. And you talk about manager saving goals. I mean, that might well be one really if they can push on and get to where they want to be, because they do want to, obviously with the Red Bull franchise, they do probably have designs on being up there in the kind of Libertadores places, and they're not anywhere near that really at the minute. So hopefully that can boost them on. For Bahia, George, they keep going up and down with these results, don't they? Now they're what, 7th at the minute. I think that's probably going to be where they end, wouldn't you kind of say?
Yeah, I think so, James. 7th, 8th, that kind of, which is fine for them. It's Sudamericana places, isn't it? Like them, like Bragantino, their opponents for this game, they'll want to eventually break into that top 4 as well, with them having the money from the City group as well. So it's two big name sort of franchise really going at each other there on was it Saturday evening or Sunday evening, I think. So yeah, interested to see Bahia. I'm a big fan of Rogerio Ceni. And I wanted to do well. They're only 5 points off the top 4, to be fair, but like you said, very up and down with the form. They can't seem to string anything like the form they had earlier on in the season together. So yeah, I'd say about 7th, 8th, 9th probably for them this season, which is decent, really.
Yeah, it is. It's fine, but it might be slight disappointment at the way things have kind of panned out. I think there's a few games that have got away from them, but yeah, let's see if they can bounce back, because we know that Senny's got it up his sleeve to do something. So yeah, young player of the round this week, George Gustavino. Well done to him. And let's move on, George, to the goal of the round, because we have already touched on the winner actually already. So, but we'll go through a contender first. There wasn't too many of them this week, I didn't think. The main one really was Clayson for Cuiabá. A free kick which went in off the bar against Kachuma, drew them level at the time in a game they did eventually win 2-1. And Cuiabá are worth mentioning this week, George, because, I mean, we spoke last time about their manager Petit. He was eventually sacked. And he was replaced by Bernardo Franco. So I don't know if you can tell us anything about Bernardo Franco.
Not really, James, to be honest with you. I think he was the assistant of one. I think was the assistant manager of.
He was assistant. He was assistant at Cuiabá last year with Antonio Oliveira.
Yes,
Obviously went to Corinthians.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, I thought he was. But you know what? It's a new name for me. Seems to have dabbled and been in for Cuiabá for a couple of years now. Finally got his chance as the main man. Really went to Corinthians, assistant manager as well there earlier this year as well. So seems to have always been the kind of assistant, never the head coach. Now he's got his opportunity. Young manager, really, James. I would hazard a guess. Well, apart from our boy at Paranense, I think he's the youngest manager in the league, probably, I would have said, at this moment in time at 38. So he's a young manager. They do seem to go for younger managers to Cuiabá. So, and it's a young team, isn't it, as we know. well, a young club. So we'll see how he does. But it was a massive win for them as well. It was huge. And that goal from Clayson was great, wasn't it? A free kick. Not often we give a free kick the go ahead, is it, James? But it nearly was this time.
Yeah, there's some. I mean, there's something about free kicking off the bar. I think sometimes it just, right up there where the goalie can't reach it. And yeah, like you said, a young manager giving him a bit of a punt. He did actually take charge of a game last year, I think, or maybe the year before. I think Oliveira was away for a game or something. He was on the bench, so a lot of the same players. So the players will know him to a degree, most of them anyway. So I think it's quite a smart appointment in some ways. And obviously they've had that new manager bounce. I think Kachuma was probably quite a kind game for them to come in to play that one. But yeah, they still had to get the points, and it just kind of, every time you think a team's just about out of it in that bottom four, somebody kind of pulls the socks up, and Kuyabara is certainly not out of it yet. George, 21 points. They've obviously played a couple less than a couple of the teams around them. They are 6 points off safety, which obviously is a little bit of a kind of a jump, but they're certainly going to give it a go, I think, aren't they?
Oh, yeah, they'll give it a go with a new manager, Franco. They'll have a go and see where it gets them. But, Clayson is no stranger to our awards as well. I think we gave him one earlier on in the season for player of the round, maybe. But, yeah, they'll give it a go. 6 points, like you said, is a bit of a jump at this stage of the season. And like you said, there is always one where you think, oh, they're done and dusted, and then they come up with a win or maybe even 2 wins in a row, and they give themselves a real fighting chance. I mean, Gio won last week, but back to form this week, and I think you've got to say, James, they're probably done and dusted. I would have thought.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, they actually won 2 in a row, didn't they, Gio? So you never know. But they
did,
do.
Yeah.
They do look slightly gone, but yeah, we're not sure just yet. But Kuyabara is certainly in that kind of group, in that mix, and obviously they will hope. They're on the 3rd manager of the season now, so I mean that's never really conducive to getting good results in the league and staying up, to be fair. But they won't be alone in that this season, I don't think so. We'll see if it works for them. A good 3 points for now. First win in 9 games, actually, it must be said. So it did, something did need a change. They changed it and it did work. So good luck to Bernardo Franco. Let's see how he can get on in his first job as a head coach. But like you said, George Clayson didn't win the goal of the round this week, because I think this was my pick, really, wasn't it? Like you said, you were maybe pushing for that Estevao goal. But the winner for me was Kawa Elias. As I mentioned before, he got the first goal in that Fluminense win over Sao Paulo. And you don't see a goal like this, George. It was such quick feet from the young man. I mean, like I said, there was a little bit of controversy around this goal, and the free kick was taken a bit quicker than Sao Paulo might have liked it to be. But from there, I think Marcelo played it into Ganso. Ganso with a lovely little roll of the outside of his boot into the path of Elias. And then Elias, he's kind of in between 2 defenders, but he takes one touch with his left foot. And then when you watch it the first time, you can't really tell what happens because it happens so quickly. But all in one movement, he kind of flicks it from his left foot, turning his back on the goal, and all of a sudden he's taking a touch with his right foot to set himself up for the shot, and then he whips it round the goalkeeper with pace into the top corner. I mean, I've never seen a touch like that, George. It was almost Dennis Bergkamp against Newcastle, but on the floor in speed.
It was a great goal, this, James, to be fair. And like you said, at first viewing, he probably looked a little bit, not ordinary, but a little bit maybe not as good as it actually was, because, like you said, the touch to set himself up and then to finish it, curled into the top corner kind of thing was it was brilliant. And I don't think it's long, James, before we see people coming in for Elias here. He's 5 goals now. He's been on our radar now for some time, and I think people's ears will have been pricked up now by Elias, and particularly that goal, at such a young age again to do what he did there. So much composure to finish the goal off, and it's not just a one-off, is it? Mind you, a lot of his other goals have been like tap-ins, haven't they, really? He's been in the right place at the right time. But, this one shows his technique, definitely.
Yeah, that's it. It shows he can do the spectacular ones, and like you said, on first viewing, it doesn't look anything particularly special. But I would urge people to go and watch the replays because he takes that one touch, and the second one is so quick. Just as the defender thinks he's got him, it's suddenly out of his way.
Just to get away, wasn't it? Yeah.
Just to get away so quick. You don't often see 1 and 2 touch like that. And it just set himself up perfectly for the shot as well. And then, he still has to finish it. And it's from, edge of the box, well, kind of just inside the area as well. It's not an easy finish still, even from when he sets himself. So I just thought it was a fantastic goal. And obviously it set Flew up for another big win for themselves. So, I thought he deserved that one. And like you said, George, he is no stranger to the pod. He's no stranger to us here at TBB. And we will be keeping a track of how he goes. I think the one thing that was kind of a question mark over Elias earlier this season was his attitude. I think he was lumped into that group with John Kennedy, like I mentioned, who were late for training and messing about, this kind of thing. So I think Mano has come in and given him a bit of a boost and got his head straight. So that might be the one thing that holds him back, but let's hope not.
No, look, it's great to see. I think that's his third award, maybe.
Might be fourth even.
Might even be the fourth, yeah. I'm not sure, but he's won a few now in such a short space of time, really, because Fluminense were not doing very well at all, James. Remember, towards the start of the season, and not since Mano's come in, he's really, like you said, not just Elias, he's probably given the whole squad a bit of a boost and a bit of sort of play with a bit of freedom. You're good players, just go and do it and show that you're good enough, you're better than being in the relegation zone. And they're cooking up a little bit of form now. That's 4 without defeat, so it's much better. I did notice as well, James, that they've named the academy, I think, after Marcelo. So Marcelo obviously started at Fluminense, had a fabulous career, at Real Madrid, obviously mainly for many years. Back to Fluminense, and now, looks like they've honoured him by giving him naming the academy after him. So that's quite something.
Yeah, that's a nice touch. And it will mean a lot to him, I'm sure. Like you said, local boy, another local boy, Thiago Silva, obviously still there, still doing particularly well. And he's one who's going to be important, it looks like, to Elias, like we said before, from the same area. He's put his hand around him, I think, and just trying to guide him on the right path. So players like that, they've got a famed academy, haven't they, Flu? But players like Marcelo and Thiago Silva coming back and helping out in what has been a difficult season. Obviously Marcelo was there before, but that's nice to see. Nice to see them give that back. Anyway, George, that's the end of the awards. I don't know if there's anything else you wanted to bring up before we move on, but there isn't a great deal to move on to, unfortunately, this week. We have hit an international break. I think it might be the first international break of the TBB season, although we did have we had the Copa America, but it played on during the Copa America, didn't it? So I think it might be the first.
It is, I'm sure. I think it is, yeah. I'm pretty sure we've never had one before, yeah.
No, so it's crept up a little bit, to be fair. I'm not sure what we'll do next week, really, but we'll work out something to do. So we won't bring you probably a regular show, but we'll work out something to do for sure. I don't know. There is one game, George, isn't there?
Yeah, Brazil played, don't they, on Saturday, James? It's early Saturday morning against Ecuador. It's a World Cup qualifier. So, but then before we do the next pod, they don't play till Wednesday. So the following Wednesday against Paraguay. So it's something to think about,
Yeah, well, if you run through the table quickly and show and just let everybody know what the standings are, and then we can perhaps just look at the Brazil squad very briefly, and then just look ahead to that qualifier.
Because there is a game in the Brazilian Serie A on Friday, and that's the last one till Wednesday. There's just the odd ones, a few teams to catch up with games. So Cuiabá play Juventude on Friday, the 6th of September at midnight. And then your team, James, Wednesday the 11th of September, Inter against Fortaleza. So, but let's run through the table anyway. So in first position is Botafogo on 50 points. Second is Fortaleza on 48. Third is Palmeiras on 47. Fourth, Flamengo on 44. Fifth, Cruzeiro on 41. In sixth position, James, Sao Paulo on 41 as well. Seventh, Bahia on 39. Eighth is Vasco on 34. Ninth is Galo on 33. On 32 points. In 10th is Inter. 11th is RB Bragantino on 30 points. 12th, Atletico Paranaense on 29. 13th, Kashuma on 28. Also on 28 in 14th place is Juventude. 15th place, Gremio on 27 points. 16th place, Fluminense on 27 points as well. Into the relegation zone, James, 17th position, Corinthians on 25. 18th position is Vitória on 22. 19th is Cuiabá on 21. And propping up the table, as usual, is Atletico GO on 18 points.
Yeah, you can rely on GO just to be exactly where you expect them to be, can't you? Really?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not been a great season for them so far, but like I said, those 2 wins have given them hope just a little bit recently. So, George, not much left to really go through, but I don't know. I just want to get your reaction to the Brazil squad, and what do you think how they'll get on in Ecuador? I don't know if they're in Ecuador or are they. Is it in Brazil itself? I mean, Ecuador can be a bit tricky to go to, I think, for teams on occasion. It's in Brazil, isn't it?
It's in Brazil. It's a home game for Brazil, yeah. So, it's pretty standard, really. I think the squad for this time, I think, James, really, it's apart from, of course, Estevao, there isn't really that much to write home about. I don't think. Mind you, Luis Henrique's got a call up. I think Pedro's been out for a little bit, so he's back in the squad. But other than that, I think it's pretty standard, actually.
Yeah, Henrique, I think it's his first call up. I think it might be. So that is a big one. That's kind of notable, and he has kind of come into it a bit for Botafogo recently. Like we said, they've kind of added that quality, and he is part of that, really. Gerson, I know, is back in there, George, your mate from Flamengo. He's not been around the squad too much of late, so that he's back in it. I mean, the one thing that really stands out to me is that midfield. I mean, this is not a vintage Brazilian midfield by absolutely any stretch of the imagination. I mean, I like Andre as a player, as I've mentioned. I also like João Gomes, but you've got 2 Wolves midfielders in there as 2 midfielders, and that's a sorry state of affairs in a way. I mean, Edison is in there, who again I really like as a player, but I think he's got 1 or 2 caps. Gerson, I think, has got 5, and then you've got Bruno Guimaraes, who's the senior man in there, and as good a player as he is, it just feels a bit lacking there, really, doesn't it? And Paquetá obviously is a slightly more advanced midfielder as well.
Yeah, I'd have to agree with you, James. It's a little bit soft, isn't it, in terms of quality? Not quality, but I think you think of Brazilian, players as a whole, and you think of the big names and that. It's not really there, is it, with that midfield, especially? Like you said, I really like Gerson as a player. Like I said, Andre's just signed for Wolves, obviously with his mate João Gomes there in the Brazilian squad as well. Will be comforting for him. But yeah, Guimaraes is definitely the senior man, and he is quality, to be fair. But again, it just lacks that kind of bit of stardust, doesn't it? In a way.
Yeah, big time, I would say. I mean, yeah, it's not. I mean, Andre has experience, obviously, as in Brazil, as in the squad already, in the national team he's played before. But you go through the whole squad, really. I mean, the defense, even something just a bit missing, isn't there? Really, I mean, the forward line. Obviously, you've got Vinicius and you've got Rodrigo, Endrick. So the Madrid trio. And then Estevao as well. So you've got a bit of stardust up there, really. But that's the only kind of area of the squad where you're looking at, and even then, I don't know, it doesn't quite feel like it. I mean, it certainly isn't a vintage Brazil, is it? This?
No, it definitely isn't. I mean, I wondered. I just, recapping it again, and I just wonder where my pal is, Rafa. If
Yeah,
he's pulled out of it, I don't know what he's doing, but he got a hat trick the other day for Barca, and obviously it was probably after Donovan Jr. has done the squad, but I don't know what's happened there. To be honest,
no,
because
he's been in great form. Yeah, he's been in good
he's
form.
usually a mainstay. He's been in good form for Barca. I don't know where the heck he is, to be fair, but who knows?
Yeah, me too. No, it seems like maybe he's gone for Pedro, perhaps. Obviously, he has been,
Possibly, yeah.
although it's Enrique really more, isn't it? Who's kind of in that position. Savinho as well. Obviously, has started quite well at City, really, hasn't he? So,
Yeah,
there are other options in there. Maybe just having a look at them, but it isn't friendlies. It is a kind of a couple of meaningful games in the World Cup
yeah,
qualifiers, and at the minute, they are in need of a win, badly in need of wins, really. They're in sixth position, which is quite unheard of, really, for Brazil after 6 games of the qualification. They've only got 7 points. They've won 2, drawn 1, and lost 3. I mean, they've lost 3 in a row in the qualifiers, George. They absolutely badly need to win these 2 games.
no, yeah, they 100% do. And like you said, even though it's Ecuador in Brazil, it's Curitiba they're actually playing. Um, so yeah, it's still a difficult match. Ecuador are a good side nowadays. Then they've got to go to Paraguay, which could be difficult as well. Yeah, they really, really need to do something here and make sure they get to the World Cup. I mean, they are quite generous with the qualification in this group. I mean, they would get World Cup qualification if they finish in sixth position still. So you know, if it's first to sixth, it doesn't really matter. You still get to the World Cup, but they want to finish first, don't they? They don't want to be behind. With no disrespect, they don't want to be behind teams like Venezuela and even Colombia. So, you know, yeah, it's time to get a move on and get a few wins under the belts.
Yeah, it certainly is. It certainly is. Let's see if they can do that. So obviously, there's no fixtures to look ahead, George. No games of the week. We will be back to that regular schedule next week. So in the meantime, I think there's all that's left to do really is to say goodbye. I mean, are you going to be able to watch those 2 national team games? What are you going to get up to?
I mean, I wouldn't have said so, James. 2 o'clock in the morning here, I think they are. So uh, I'll be sleeping, I would have said.
Yeah, that's absolutely. I think that'll be my course of action as well. But anyway, hope you've enjoyed the show, everybody. Catch you on the other side.
I do.
Adios.
Bringing the passion from every town. Let the world be filled with love tonight. Sway to the beat, make you feel so right.